Alrighty, so I am going to be talking about the JFK assassination today. It's probably one of the more controversial topics in the world. So this does apply to the U.S. History 2 CLEP exam. If you are interested in testing out of your degree, go check out CLEP, DSST, Straighter Line, a bunch of different sources that you can use to maximize your efficiency and test out of 130 grand worth of tuition or more. So don't get any college debt whatsoever. This could apply to that, but this is also going under the conspiracy pillar as well, because this is the most prominent conspiracy of the 60s that I can think of, minus maybe the moon landing. So I do want to talk about the different narratives involved and certain flaws and certain issues with them, and allow you guys to make your own opinion. I'd love for you guys to leave down in the comments any thoughts that you have on this, anything that you'd like to add to this. If you check the description, I do show you pretty extensively where this information is coming from. I don't want to pretend like this is just all from the top of my brain or anything like that either. This is all documented, well-researched information through a lot of public information that the government's been releasing. So if you want to go check all that out, you're more than welcome to. I also have some side videos in there that can kind of show you overviews of certain little topics. So going through everything, what happens in the JFK assassination? So on November 22nd of 1963, there's actually a great show called 11/22/63. I checked it out a while ago, so I don't really remember if it's accurate or not or anything like that, but it was a good show when I watched it. But JFK and Jackie Kennedy are riding in the back of their vehicle through the Dallas streets, and JFK, when you watch the video, his head literally just explodes. He is shot in the head. Jackie tries to recover part of his skull, but in that process, instead climbs out of the back of the vehicle. So, just leaving it there, not talking about any of the specifics as to where the gun was or any of those pieces. I do recommend, if you are at this point right now, go look in the description for the footage. I would watch the footage yourself. There are so many doctored variations of the footage that it is really ridiculous. So the Zapruder tape is what is known as the most common tape that people look at. So, talking about the Warren Commission. So this side right here is the official narrative. All right, so the official narrative is done by the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission, they investigated the assassination. In front of JFK is Governor Connally. So Governor Connally is shot in the process, but not killed during the assassination. So looking at the autopsy and these different things, we can get kind of an idea of all of that. So also based off of the actions of Lee Harvey Oswald and what he does within the time period of the shooting, how he runs away, and then whether or not he acted alone. So, talk about the conclusion. So, the U.S. government states that, based off the Warren Commission, that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. That is their official claim, that he fired 3 shots from a Texas school book depository. So if I'm JFK, the depository is up and to the right, aiming down, coming this way at this angle to hit in the back of his skull. All right. So these last 2 points, though, there are some flaws with, and I do want to address these because these are part of the narrative. And as I stay with things, I don't want to stay what necessarily I think is true. I'll say what I believe, and I'll point out points, and I'll try to justify those 2 things and differentiate them. And if I say something that's inaccurate, please tell me. I would love to be corrected on this. I want to make sure that we get to the bottom of the truth, because the reality at the end of the day is when you stack a bunch of truths on top of each other, you find the truth of everything. And when a lie is presented to you and you can find all the holes in the lie, you realize that the whole thing is just not even real. So that's kind of part of it. So here are the 2 major issues with the official narrative of the Warren Commission. 1 bullet hit JFK and Connally. They call this the magic bullet theory. If you want to see actual diagrams, check the video in the description. The problem with this theory is this. So like I said, Connally is sitting in front of JFK. The bullet comes through JFK's head, goes through his head into the upper back, the upper shoulder area of Governor Connally. It then goes through his chest, it somehow goes down from his shoulder, down into his lung, out there, then into his wrist bone, his right wrist, that then propels it to go sideways and shoot into his thigh. Okay? So, this leaves a lot of speculation. Anybody who shot a gun realizes that there's no way in any possibility that a bullet could move in that way. It doesn't make any sense. So there had to be bullets coming from multiple directions. It's the only thing that made any sense in this context. Or the direction was not from Lee Harvey Oswald. So there's multiple different theories, and this is the thing that sucks about conspiracy, is it's a theory, so you don't know the truth. And when the main truth has holes in it, that's another problem. The other major problem with this story is that 2 days after, on the 24th and after the 22nd, Lee Harvey Oswald is assassinated by a man named Jack Ruby, and it is videotaped. The footage of it is very public and very visible. The claim is that he acted completely alone. He ended up dying in prison, I believe, in 1967. So definitely want to look into that. Jack Ruby is a very interesting character. Definitely look into his backstory. There's a lot of people who speculate that he worked with criminal organizations. The Warren Commission does say that he did not, and that he worked completely alone. What do you think? It's up to you on this. So, the major flaws of the narrative are the magic bullet, Lee Harvey's death, and then Jack Ruby's origins, okay? The other aspect to this is the driver. Now, depending on the footage that most people see, they'll either see something that is not really visible with the front, where it's doctored, or you can see the driver turn over his shoulder like this. Now, you can't necessarily see anything else besides this motion, but the motion is boom, boom, he's shot, his head explodes, he's back to one. It is instantaneous, and it is on time. And so that's a big part of that. Again, you can watch the footage down below, all right? So, where conspiracy comes in, I always like to say this with conspiracy. People don't really know what this word means. Conspiracy comes from the word conspire. Conspire meaning to gather together to overthrow, or not necessarily overthrow, but to work together to create something specifically. Typically, it's in the idea of overthrowing power in particular, okay? So the assumption that many conspiracy theorists live by is that Lyndon B. Johnson, the president, who was the vice president at the time, he becomes the president of the United States, because he wants to push forward with the Great Society as well as the Civil Rights Movement, that he had something to do with this, and the fact that it was buried by the Warren Commission makes him responsible. Again, I'm not saying that as the claim. That, again, it's so much more up in the air than that, but I want to go through a lot of the different points, all right? The other aspect is it was the Soviet Union or Cuba that did it. If you want to look at the specifics in the context, we are in the midst of the Cold War. The Bay of Pigs invasion, which was an invasion of Cuba in 1961. We invaded their land because we were upset with them being aligned with the Soviets, so there was fear there. That led to the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the Soviet Union brings a bunch of missiles to Cuba, and now we're terrified because we're scared of these missiles being launched into America, so JFK does a 13-day blockade of Cuba itself. So there's people who speculate that they had involvement. Now, something that I really want to point out in general is the 1961 Secret Society speech. Again, I recommend that you listen to the primary source. Something that I heard growing up my whole life is that if it comes from a .gov or a .edu, that means it's valuable and you should trust it. And I'm going to be honest, don't. Don't trust anything that isn't your own instinct based off of all of the facts that you're presented. You have to analyze all the facts. Look at the primary sources consistently. We live in a world now of AI, where AI will literally argue and debate with you over topics that are significant and really prominent issues. So, this being said, I will address certain things shortly. So, the idea of the Secret Society speech is that it was the Freemasons and the Illuminati who committed the act. Now, there is specific evidence the Freemasons love to use the number 33. There are 33 degrees of Freemasonry. And if you also look at the 33rd degree of latitude across the earth, it's where a lot of the controversies of the world happen. Places that are at the 33rd parallel are Roswell, New Mexico, Dallas, so where the assassination took place. You have the Bermuda Triangle, you have Israel, the pyramids, you have multiple places in Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, as well as the main hub of cities in China. It's also where Hiroshima and Nagasaki are, and Truman dropped the nuclear bomb on them, and he was the 33rd president. So there's a bunch of different things all around the number 33. They love to use this as like a code word kind of thing. Anyway, he gives this whole speech, and the speech, in summation, I would recommend that you listen to his words, not mine as trusting, but listen to his words. In summation, is that the government, or the deep state of the government, that he wants no more secret societies. John is just done with the secret society grouping of things. He doesn't like people operating behind closed doors, and his reasoning and his explanation is that they control government, education, science, everything on that realm. And the problem with them being in secret is that they don't need accountability or credit for anything. So if they do something really good, they don't take credit, and if they do something really bad, they don't take responsibility. And so what ends up happening is you just do a bunch of bad things because nobody's holding you responsible. And that's what he says during the speech. So that speech happens in 1961. The theory in this speech is that the driver, I forget his name off the top of my head, but the driver himself was connected to the secret society in some way. Now, depending on who you talk to, they also might talk about the mononuclear program. I did have a student tell me that they think that all of these have some relation to each other. I wouldn't disagree. I think that there's probably some aspect of everything that is true. The truth is always in the middle of all the perspectives, right? So don't believe one narrative is truth. I had a bunch of students Googling something really quick and like, see, it's on this .gov website, that makes it true. I'm like, well, read what the document actually says and read through it, and you'll find a lot of holes oftentimes. So looking at the mononuclear program in particular. So this happens in 1963. John F. Kennedy and Ben Gurion, who's the prime minister of Israel at the time, the dude with the really frizzy side hair, which, who am I to talk? But anyway, they're writing letters back and forth about the mononuclear program in Israel. They are trying to develop the first, not the first, they're trying to develop nuclear weaponry, but JFK is wanting to make sure that's not the case. They're trying to just make sure it's a nuclear reactor providing energy. So when he wanted transparency on the program, he has an American go out there to check on it, and Israel sends this person to a fake facility. There's fake knobs, there's fake things everywhere, and all of this stuff makes him very, very frustrated. And so what ends up happening is that in June of 1963, JFK writes another letter, which is worded oftentimes as an ultimatum. He sends this ultimatum to the Prime Minister of Israel, which is basically saying, show us the real place or you're gone. Before he even opens the letter, supposedly, Ben Gurion resigns unexpectedly. This isn't the end of his term or anything like that. He just stops being a part of it. And then Israel, right after the assassination, develops an atomic bomb between 64 and 67. They don't have a specific date because they don't release that information, but that's very important. The other element to this part of the story is that Jack Ruby, his actual last name is Jack Rubenstein. So again, there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not he had involvement and connection to both the secret society as well as the mononuclear program. So I hope this gave you kind of a good overview of a lot of different controversies around this. There are books upon books on this topic. There are so many debates. Again, I left all of my resources in the description. I genuinely hope that you dive deep yourself. And if you find something that is super, super important, please come up. And if I said something that's incorrect, please correct it in the comments. I'll pin it to the top so people who are watching this, you can see any errors that I made in the video. I want to be very specific and clear about all of those. But I don't want to say worried, but in the sense of what we've developed with AI, when I was questioning this narrative with AI, something that really had bothered me is that John F. Kennedy, his head goes backwards. His head doesn't go forward in the video. So if you were to get smacked in the back of the head, your head's going to go this way, naturally. If you get smacked in the back of at the front of the head, your head's going to go this way. His head goes this way. That's the big thing. His head goes in this direction, meaning the bullet had to come from this direction. So when you ask AI this question, what AI decides to tell you is that the bullet hit some random nerve in his spine to have a similar effect to you hitting your knee, so your foot kicks, that his head would react the opposite way because of that nerve getting hit. Honestly, it seems very absurd as an explanation to me. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I got a little frustrated at this point, so when I asked AI back, I was like, this doesn't really make any sense. Like, how would you determine this? And then they started labeling things conspiracies. This is something that I really want to address. The problem with the title of conspiracy is sometimes it really is a conspiracy. Sometimes we don't, it's just a theory that we don't have any evidence for, there's no proof for, there's no backing for. The other time with a conspiracy, which is honestly what I've been noticing is the majority of the time, is that when somebody labels something a conspiracy, what it actually is suggesting is that this person knows what they're talking about, and I want the rest of the world to dismiss their argument. I want everybody else to go, this person doesn't make any sense. They're a conspiracy theorist. Same way as I can go, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're a fill in the blank, you're a sexist, you're a misogynist. Everything is just a title. Here's a label for you. I'm going to put this label on you so you're dismissed. And so when people use the title conspiracy specifically, it's you are a theorist, you're insane, you're crazy, you don't believe anything, you're in your basement doing all these different things, and that's how people act and they treat you. So people want to get to the truth of things, and I'll be honest, we know this now more than ever. The U.S. government doesn't tell us the truth. They never tell us the truth. It's one of their favorite things to do is to lie. And so in response to this AI prompting of all this BS, I was like, let me guess, you probably think Tyler Robinson assassinated Charlie Kirk too? And the response was, I don't know what you're talking about. Charlie Kirk is alive and well. And I said, no, he was assassinated in September of 2025. And then it corrected itself, and it tracked back really fast. And so I was like, why are you being so I literally asked it, why are you being defensive? And it dismissed the whole thing. I wish I still had the conversation with me, but this is just something that we should be aware of. Don't trust AI to tell you all the facts. I have multiple friends who do that. You can use AI as a tool. Understand it is blocking us from valuable information. Study the perspectives of every individual involved. Study why they were doing the things they were doing. And I know it's a lot because this is hundreds of people who could be involved in this whole process, but when you watch the footage, you'll see it yourself. It's very, very clear. It's not subtle. The driver turns around and he does shoot him. And so the fact that they don't want to tell us that is a big deal. I did have a student say that, well, could Lee Harvey and the driver be involved in it together? Totally possible. It's totally possible. There's a lot of speculation on whether or not Lee Harvey himself was an MK Ultra patient. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother time, but it's a very strong possibility, so I don't want to dismiss it either. Again, if you have any questions, please leave them down below. Like, subscribe, comment. Yeah, let me know what you guys think.